So I'm going to provide a 6 to 8 minute introduction to this film. This is a 1 hour 42-minute film that was made in 2018 and presented to its first audience in 2019 and was released in France, I believe in September of 2020 after the first wave of COVID. So needless to say, it's a great pleasure for me to be here in a movie theater with such a big audience in celebrating a movie. Films are made for this setting, beautiful sound, big picture, etc. And this film is also a film, I'm a film scholar, I'm affiliated to the Department of Film, Television and Theatre, where I serve as an associate professor, by the way, and my name is Olivier Morel. This film is also a film about cinema. It is not just about a filmmaker, but it's also about how a filmmaker became a filmmaker while using a camera. And so that's human and camera, the two words, right? Human, camera, the man with a camera, which is an echo to the 1929 film by Vertov, The Man with a Camera. It's a film about a man camera. It's also the woman with a camera. Not camera woman or camera man, not the person who holds the camera, but the person as a camera. The person is a camera. There's a young woman in this film that we're about to watch. And she's filming a police officer, right? And you'll see what happens. I'm not going to tell you anything about the film, by the way, probably. She's holding a camera. She's filming a police officer. And this is a reminder for this film made in 2018, again, of the fact that today everyone is virtually a human camera, not a human filming or a human with a camera, but here the transition, of course, that I'm highlighting, we are human cameras. And we is important here. We are human cameras. More than ever before, cameras like glasses, like shoes, they are a part of who we are, and they are a part of who we physically are. They are a part of our body, of our bodies. And this is the rise of what I call in the research, because I'm on leave and I have time to read and research currently. And this is a part of a research that I have engaged a few years ago. It's part of what I call the camera prosthesis, the new era. That's the era of the camera prosthesis, right? Prosthesis like glasses, like fake teeth, like shoes, right? The camera is a part of our body. The American filmmaker, Michael Moore, and not only him, recently declared, that was in April of 2021, that Darnella Frazier, who filmed the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis on May 25 of 2020, that Darnella Frazier should be considered one of the most important filmmakers of our time. No film, wrote Moore in a tweet, no film in our time has been more important than yours. He was addressing specifically Darnella Frazier personally and publicly. Darnella Frazier, indeed, without Mrs. Frazier, without her courage, the version of Mr. Floyd's death would probably have been what the police published on its official website on May 26, and I quote, this is what the police of Minneapolis writes on its official website a few hours after George Floyd was declared dead. I quote, officers were able to get the suspect into handcuffs and noted he appeared to be suffering medical distress. Officers called an ambulance. He was transported to Hennepin County Medical Center by ambulance, where he died a short time later, unquote. On October 14, 2008, in the suburban impoverished housing project town of Paris called Montfermeil, a young student named Abdoulaye Fofana, who is black, was brutally beaten while handcuffed by two police officers. The third one watched without intervening. On that occasion, a 30-year-old resident of the housing project films the entire scene. He does what Darnella Frazier did in Minneapolis, and like her, but before the smartphone era, he cinematically recorded a crime perpetrated by the police. He is the cinematic consciousness of this crime, of this injustice perpetrated by the hands of law enforcement personnel. The name of the man who's filming this scene is Lajli. Lajli describes his impulse to film as a need to engage in what he calls cop watching in French. He calls that cop watching. And of course, the fact that he says those terms in English and everybody understands, of course, is very important. Policing the police is a practice inaugurated by the Black Panthers in Oakland, California, as I hope everybody knows, in 1966. It was a response to police brutality, and the idea of monitoring the police is one of the origins of the Black Panther Party. The only thing that truly differentiates the BPP activists and the way they were policing the police, the only thing that differentiates the practice of the Black Panther Party's activists and Lajli today, or Darnella Frazier, is that Lee and Frazier do not need to carry a gun in order to police the police. Lajli, like Darnella Frazier, they pull out a camera. Lajli was always carrying a camera. Before the smartphone era, he was always going around the housing projects where he was a resident with a camera. So he's the man, she's the woman with a camera. The man camera, the woman camera. And this is the origin of the film that we are about to watch, titled Les Misérables, right? The interactions between police and citizens that Lajli filmed throughout most of his life as a resident in Montfermeil, and he still lives in Montfermeil, are what inspired him to make a 25-minute documentary called 365 Days in Clichy, Montfermeil, shot during the 2005 riots. Now, I don't have time to recall everything about this riot, this episode, but it triggered, long, I believe more than a month of state of emergency in the city of Montfermeil and many suburban cities of Paris and France and France. This also triggered this idea of making this film for Lajli. This triggered the transition from documentary filmmaking, from capturing scenes in Lajli's mind, to making short films. And so in the aftermath of filming the riots and filming the police, things that he's done throughout his young life and even as an adult, he made a short film titled Les Misérables. And later he adapted this short film and turned this short film into the film that we are about to watch. So shot in 2018, Les Misérables was selected for the Oscars. It received many awards and was one of the most commented films presented at the Cannes Film Festival in May of 2019, where he won the highly prestigious jury award. An electroshock, wrote Véronique Coapé, the film critic of the journal, the daily newspaper Le Monde. A sensation, wrote Léon Pajot in Jeune Afrique. It's also an indicator of the fact that this film was very impactful in Africa. A film so politically and socially impactful that the French President Emmanuel Macron himself had to make everyone know that he had seen Les Misérables, which echoes another moment, and these are very rare moments, right, in history, when a president sees a film and wants everyone to know that he or she, he in this case, has seen the film. We had a very similar example of that in 2006 when Rachid Bouchareb made his film Indigène Days of Glory, a film about the discrimination endured by North African soldiers who had liberated France. You might know that these are African soldiers from Tunisia, mostly in Algeria, who liberated the south of France and then, liberated Alsace and other parts of France. Well, Rachid Bouchareb's film in 2006 was about the injustice endured by those soldiers who had faced discriminations and racism in spite of the fact that they were war heroes. And so Jacques Chirac, the president of the time, had to watch the film and had to say, I saw it, and express all kinds of feelings and reflections, but this had a political impact at the highest level. And I believe that also this intersection between cinema and sovereignty is thought-provoking. These are also ideas that we could discuss after the screening if you want. So as introduced earlier, Les Misérables contains countless references to riots triggered by the police chase of Bouna and Zied in Clichy-sous-Bois in the fall of 2005. This is what triggered this fall of riots in the suburban cities of France back in 2005, 16 years ago. This was related to police brutality. So aged 15 and 17, Bouna and Zied were panicked by a police chase and found refuge in an electric box that caused them to die by burns and electrocution. If we want to talk about references, of course, I hope no one's here to see Les Misérables by Victor Hugo, but at the same time, this is also Les Misérables by Victor Hugo in so many ways, so we should probably also discuss this aspect, this obvious echo to Victor Hugo. But what I personally find mind-blowing about this film is a point of entry that reminds me of James Baldwin's account of the racial violence in which he grew up and spent most of his life, which includes numerous toxic interactions, as you know, with the US police, starting at a very, very young age. This might be the origin of Baldwin the writer. Like the murder of George Floyd makes Darnella Frazier a filmmaker, one of the most important filmmakers of our time. And the murder of Bouna and Zied and the violence against Abdoulaye Fofana, I was about to say documented or captured. It's difficult to find the appropriate terms, but filmed by Lajli in 2008 and in 2005 also. This is what makes Lajli a filmmaker, and what takes center stage. It's not the filmmaker who has the idea of like, okay, I'm going to write a film and use the camera as a writing instrument. The camera takes center stage here. This is the camera and the use of the camera that makes the filmmaker and that makes the film. So what struck the audience of Lajli's film is how accurate and deep his perception and depiction of the police was in this film. Lee made a point of trying to avoid cliches, including cinematic ones, right? A resident of Montfermeil, where he made Les Misérables, he has observed the police, analyzed, psychoanalyzed even, dissected the police as an institutional body throughout his life. He also spent a considerable amount of time with the police while he was developing his movie, and also is probably the first. I hate to say he's the first because every time you say that someone raises his hand or her hand, so please contradict me, but he's believed to be the first filmmaker who's from a housing project and makes a film about the housing projects, right? And about police brutality in this context. So it cannot be compared to La Haine by Mathieu Kassovitz, for example, in this context. So he spent a considerable amount of time with the police when he was developing his movie, right? Here is one possible reading of Lee's approach that a text by Baldwin suggested to me, by which I could conclude this long introduction. Here is Baldwin's voice. I quote, You never had to look at me. I had to look at you. I know more about you than you know about me. Unquote. Thank you.